Hello guys, welcome to my channel again. So as you have already seen the title, we are going to work on this code, and in this code we are going to see the functionality something like this. So you will see a window like this and you have to provide a city here. So let's say Haridwar, provide the city name and it has to be accurate, and you click on the search button, then it will show you the temperature as well as what it looks like. And it's night here, so that's why it's dark, otherwise it would be sun here, right? You also get the air quality index. 4 means that it is almost appropriate, and that's why it's good. And you have the parameters as well, like you can decide whether it's good there or not, right? So these information will be displayed whenever you type on a city. So now let's say if I do Bali, then you will see different, and here you see that it's cloudy as well as we have sun there, so it's day there right now, and it's light rain, the temperature is this, and air quality index is 2. So this is how you can actually have this. So this is what the application will look like, and this is what the functionality is going to be there. So before we actually work on this logic, if you are new to my channel, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel yet, please do. It's a simple task, just hit on that red colored subscribe button, and that's all. Now let's work on the code. So the very first thing is to import libraries that we require in this project. So that's going to be TKinter for sure, and then you need a box message, so that we have to import, so message box. And then we need to hit an OpenWeather API, which is going to be through request. I'll talk more about OpenWeather API afterwards, so just hold on to that. Then I need to have PIL, which is going to import image and image TK. I'll explain this. And lastly we need bytes IO, so from IO import bytes IO. Now the explanation, we need this because we have to create a GUI interface. That's why we are going to work with TKinter. Then the message box, which is going to be used for your pop-up dialogues like error messages, so that is where we are going to use this. Then talking about request, this library is imported to handle HTTP request. We will use it to communicate with the OpenWeatherMap API. Now talking about PIL, so this imports the image and image TK classes from the PIL library, which allow us to manipulate and display images in TKinter, right? And for your bytes IO, this allows us to convert a byte stream like an image from a URL in memory image that PIL can work with. So these two are going to work together. Alright, now let's talk about OpenWeatherMap API. So now if you want to use OpenWeatherMap API, we need to do few steps. First is that you need to register on the official website. Then you need to verify the email on which you have registered. Then you need to subscribe to the services, generate an API key, and we need to use the same generated API key with every API service for the authentication. So yeah, that is a must, and keep that in mind. Alright, so first thing first is that we need to register, and you need to create a new account here. So these are the fields that we need to fill here. So you need to just fill out every important details that you see here as marked important. So email, first name, last name, address, pretty much everything is mandatory here. So just provide everything up. So if you don't provide the mandatory thing, then you will see an error like this, and then you can continue for payment. So through payment, if you reside in India, then you have only one option of using card. Otherwise you can choose Revolt Pay or other ways that you see here. I don't have any Revolt Pay option here, so I used my credit card and I did the payment. So if you notice here, this is completely free. I didn't got anything credited in my card, and afterwards I got the successful message, and with that you can also log in. So once the payment is successful, you can try to log into the account. So once you log in, you can see here that we are seeing a box saying that we have to verify our email to use OpenWeatherMap services. So even if I try to use the API services right now, I won't be able to, because there is no confirmation done from my side. So first I need to do the confirmation. So in your email address, whatever you have provided, you will see an email like this, and here you will see a lot of information. So this is just the introduction part, which you can also see in the official website as well. Now click on the verify your email button to verify your email address, and once you do that, you will be able to create API keys. And for me, this is the API key which has been provided to me, and I can use this in my project, any project that I want. So here I can also create multiple API keys. That is optional. If you want to do that, you can do it. And this is how you can actually generate your API key and successfully use OpenWeatherMap APIs. And remember that this is a must, and this is completely free of cost if you are using it within a limit. Afterwards you will have to pay a certain amount. So do try to have this in your mind that this is not completely free. It is going to be paid if you are using it more often. So I'm using this for just testing, so I'm not going to be paying anything here. So keep that in mind. Now let's move on to the next lecture. So basically we are going to use 3 APIs here. So your very first is going to be the current weather data. So the concept here is that you need to provide a geolocation on which you want to have the weather data produced. So that geo data needs to be downloaded or created using this geocoding API. So these two are going to work together. So as you can see here, we have to make an API call like this, and here the parameters that are required are latitude and your longitude. So these have to be fetched through your geocoding API. So when we use geocoding API, here we only provide the city name. Alright, we don't need to provide state code and country code. The city name would work fine. Also here, if you notice, the API key is common throughout. So in this application, basically we are doing two things. First is to fetch the weather data, and second is to fetch the air pollution data. So for weather data, we need to hit this API, which requires to provide latitude and longitude, and for that we need to call geocoding API first to get those parameters. So when we hit this API, we will get the latitude and longitude. Alright, so the example here is like this. When you hit this API, here you see the city name is provided as London and limit as 5, and then your app ID. So limit is optional. Here we have used it. So this means that number of the locations in the API response, up to 5 results can be returned in the API response. Alright, so I'm not going to use this, but here in this example they have used it. So in this you can see the response is going to be like this. The name is there, then you have all sort of local names. Alright, so it's a very big response. Now through this you can try to segregate or fetch the exact information that you want, like latitude and longitude, which we are going to do. Now talking about your weather data API, here when you hit this API, what you get basically the weather data, and it's going to be something like this. So here we have the ID, we have the current state, and then we have the description, and afterwards you will see the more details like your temperature, feels like, and you can try to fetch as many details as you want. I don't want to bombard the user with all these sort of information, so I'm just going to use temp here and your main. Now talking about air pollution API, so here what do we require basically? Here when we hit the API, again we require latitude and longitude, which we have already fetched with this geocoding API. Now when we actually hit this API, we get the response in this tabular format. No, we get the response in JSON format, and these are the parameters that we get. And when you see this index, this is what matters most. So we have up to 5 values, 1 to 5. 5 means very poor, which we rarely get, and 1 means that it is good. So if you see the index for a city as 1, then it's very good. right? So that is how we are going to decide as well. So when we see here that we have hit this API, then the response is going to be something like this. Here if you see, we have all the components of CO, NO, NO2, O3, right? And then you have the main detail here, which is your main AQI, which is 1. So this means that good. So here if you see, 1 means that, where did it go? 1 means that it is good. So this is what we have to achieve in the code itself. So this was the introduction of the APIs that we have to use in our code to make this application working. Alright, so the very first thing is that we have to fetch the latitude and longitude. So for that, let me create the API call here. So this is going to be a GET request, and we are going to hit it something like this. Now I can remove London here, and let's do Delhi, and I can remove limit condition here. For API key, I need to provide the API key, and this is my API key. Now let's hit this. Alright, so you don't need to include quotes here. That is why I was getting the error. Now if you see, we got the response, and we have local names, right? We have these information, and then we have latitude and longitude. So let's keep them aside. So let's paste them here. I'm going to use them. Now the second API call is for the weather data. So again, this is the sample here, and I need to provide the latitude and longitude here. So first goes your latitude, and then your longitude, and lastly your API key. Alright, so we got the coordinates along with the weather. So it's haze, and the temperature is 300 something, and you have visibility information here. So you are seeing all sort of information, right? And you see that you see the city name as well. So that's how you can say that the latitude and longitudes are correct. Alright, and the last thing is your pollution data. So let's hit that as well. So let me replace everything up quickly. Alright, let's hit it, and you got the data. So here if you see, you have all the parameters, and you have AQI as 5, which is very poor, and it usually is. So these are the API calls that we need to make, and we get to see a lot of information here. So we need to choose like what information we want to produce or show the user. So let's work on the code. Now let's work on the code. So let me remove these. Now let's create an API key parameter here. The variable is going to be common throughout every API call, so that's why I'm going to keep it as a global variable. And there we go. So this is where we basically so this is your OpenWeatherMap API key as string, and this API key is required to authenticate your request to OpenWeatherMap services. So this is a must. Now as I said, your both API calls, your pollution data and your weather data APIs require latitude and longitude. So for that I need to get the coordinates. So get city coordinates, and here we will get the city name. Here we will provide the URL that we need to hit, and this is the URL that we saw on the API documentation. So here what we need to change is this city name is going to be city, and we can leave these details out, and either you can remove the limit here or you can keep the limit as 1. Now API key is going to be fetched through the parameter which is your API key, and there you go. Now when we hit this API, we need to save the response. So let's hit this API using request dot get, as this is a get request, and here we will provide the URL. Now first we will check if the response status code is 200 or not. If it is 200, in that case we will fetch the data, in a JSON format. So response.json, and if data is not empty, in that case we need to return the first index of that array, and from that we need to fetch the latitude, comma, data, and then again first index, and then your longitude. So we have limited everything to 1, so that is how we know that it is not going to have more than one element in the array. So it's not going to be, so this is not going to break in that case, right? But there is a possibility that the data could be empty. So in that case we want to showcase an error using the message box, and here we will say show error. It is going to be of type error, so this is your title, and in the body you want to print city and then your city name. Keep that in quotes, and we will say not found. This means that the city that we have provided was not correct, as in the name of the city was not correct, right? And we will see this also in an example. And again there is a possibility that we don't get 200 OK response, maybe the API was down or something else, right? So in that case we want to produce another error message box, show error, title as error, and then we will say geocoding API error, as this is an geocoding API error. And in that case you can print response dot status code, or we can print the entire response as well, which is going to have a lot of information. So if nothing goes well, in that case we will return none. Now let's understand this code line by line. So this is a function that takes a city name as an argument and returns the latitude and longitude coordinates of that city. In this URL basically we have constructed the API URL using the provided city name and the API key. So this F string basically allow us to insert variables directly into the string. The URL queries the OpenWeatherMap geocoding API to get the coordinates of the specified city. And here limit equals to 1, this limits the result to one location, returning the most relevant match. Now response here, this sends an HTTP GET request to the constructed geocoding URL, and this response is stored in the variable response. Now if this status code is 200, so this checks if the status code is 200, meaning the request was successful. Then you convert the API response to JSON format and store it in the variable data. This checks if the data variable is not empty, meaning the city was found. Then here we are returning the latitude and longitude from the first result in the JSON response. Now if we are coming in this else condition, so this means that the status code is not 200, and that means that an error occurred in the API request and an appropriate error message is displayed, which is this. Now talking about this else condition, so what do we have here? So if the data is empty, in that case we can say that the city was not found. So in that case it will display an error box message which is your this, and here we will just display that the city was not found. Alright, now the last else condition, this means that the status code was not 200 and an error occurred in the API request, for which we want to print an appropriate error message, which we are displaying here. Now this return none basically means that if there is any other error, it could be either with the API request, or if the city is not found any error, the function returns none in that case. Alright, so now we have the city coordinates. Now we just need to fetch the weather data and pollution data. So let's work on the weather data first, and for that we need a method get weather data. Now here we need two arguments basically. First is your latitude and second longitude. This is what we have fetched in this previous method. Alright, now the URI, so this is what you have in the API docs. Let me put this in a quote. So this is what you see basically, right? So let's create this as a URL. So let's say weather URL. Alright, so here we need to replace this with latitude and this one with longitude and this one with API key. So let's do that. API key, and we have latitude and longitude here. Now one additional thing that we can do is that I want to have metric unit here, so I can append this here. So it's going to be like this. Now we have the URL with us. Now we just need to fetch the response. So response equals request dot, again this is going to be get request and then your weather URL. Now we have the response. So first thing first, we need to check if the response status code was 200 or not. So if it is 200, in that case I want to return everything. Otherwise I just want to display a message box, show error and title error, and then we will say weather API error and then your status code. So response dot status code, and then we can simply return none. Alright, so let's understand this line by line. So this is your method which defines the get weather data function, which takes the latitude and longitude of a location and returns the weather data for that location. Now here we have constructed the URL to fetch the weather data from OpenWeatherMap API using the provided latitude and longitude. And API key is a must, that we have already talked about. Now talking about this units, this ensures that the temperature data is returned in Celsius. Now this line basically just sends an HTTP GET request to the constructed weather URL and stores the response in response variable. Now if the status code is 200, in that case I'm just converting the API response to JSON format and returning it. Otherwise I'm printing a message box with an error that something went wrong with the API. Now to fetch the air pollution data, we need to create another function which is going to be something like air pollution, and again this is going to have two arguments, latitude and longitude. And here we need to have an URL. Let's name it pollution URL, and this is going to be your URL. Here we need to change this. So this is what we see in the API docs, that's where I'm copying it from, and then I just need to get the response. So let me simply copy this. Now instead of weather URL, this is going to be pollution URL, and here through this response I'm going to fetch the list and then your 0th index. So let's talk about why we did this here. First let me do this, air pollution API error. So this was our API that we hit for the city Delhi, and here if you see, the first thing we get is coordinate that we don't want. We only want the list data, and that is why we have fetched the list data, and inside that I want to fetch this entire 0th index. So this means that it is an array, and this means that this is the first index of that array, and here this is what I have done. Now just to summarize, we have constructed the URL here to fetch the pollution data. Here we are fetching the response, and if the status code is 200, in that case I'm converting the response to JSON and extracts the first item from the list key which contains the air pollution data for that location. Else we display an error message box to display that something went wrong with the API. Okay, so before we actually work on any new function, we need to first create a window. The window where we actually displays all the options or the information to the user, right? So that is where you need TKinter. So first thing first is that you need a root, and for that I need TK instance. So this line initializes the main window for the application, and this also serves as the parent window for all the widgets, which can be your buttons, labels, entry fields, etc. Now let's set a title. Weather and air pollution app. Now this sets the title of the main window, which will appear on the Windows title bar. Now root dot geometry, and here I'll say 400 by let's say 650. So this defines the dimension of the main window to be 400 pixels wide and 650 pixels tall. Alright, now let's set a background color. BG equals, so this one configures the background color of the main window to a dark gray color using this hex code. Now let's work on the top frame. So this was all your parent window, and now let's work on our top frame. So for this we will create another object, tk.frame. Here we will say root, and then we need a background color here, and then bd equals to 10. Let's use the same background color. Now what we are doing here is we have created a frame widget, which is a container that can hold other widgets, and it's added to the root window with a dark background and a border width of 10 pixels. So that is your BD. Now top frame dot pack, padding y equals to 20. So here we are placing the top frame in the window with 20 pixels of vertical padding, which adds some space around the frame. Now title label, tk.label, top frame, a text, weather and air pollution app. Then we need a font, so as always I'm going to go with Helvetica 20 and then bold. Now we need a foreground color here, so that is going to be white, and then your background color is going to be same, dark gray. So here we have created a label widget inside top frame. This label displays the text weather and air pollution app with the Helvetica font, size 20 and bold style. The text color is going to be white and the background color is going to be dark gray. Now title pack dot pack. So this basically adds the label to the top frame so that it would be visible on the window. Now we need to have a city entry. So this is where you actually place a name for the city for which you want to generate the weather and air pollution data. So another frame, input frame equals to tk.frame. It is going to be placed inside root, and background color is going to be same. So this creates another frame widget for holding the city entry and the search button. So we are going to have two fields, entry field for city and the search button. So the background color here is set for dark gray to maintain consistency. Input frame dot pack. So this adds the input frame to the main window with 10 pixels of vertical padding for spacing. Now main stuff, city entry equals to tk.entry, input frame. Let's copy this. So here the font size is going to be 14. We don't need bold here. We need a width of size 20 and BD 2, and then we need relief flat, and then we need foreground as white, and let's change the background, and then let's do insert background white. Alright, so here we have created an entry widget which allows the user to type in text, in this case the city name. So the text will appear in Helvetica 14 size font, width equals to 20, which defines the size of the entry box. That means that how many characters you can actually put. And then BD equals to 2, basically this sets the border width of the entry box. Relief equals to flat. This removes the 3D border effect, making it flat for a modern look. Then you have foreground as white, background sets for the dark gray, and insert background equals to white. This changes the color of the blinking cursor to white. Now the very last thing, which is going to pack. Side is going to be tk dot left and pad x equals to 10. So this places the city entry inside the input frame and aligned to the left side with 10 pixels of horizontal padding. So this is just for me, but this matters the most. I want to align the input entry field to the left and the search button to the right. That is what I'm going to do here. Now for search button, again we will have a button, search button equals to tk dot button, and here we will have input frame, text equals to search, font equals to Helvetica, we need a background color and then we need a foreground color. So foreground color is going to be white and this is going to be our background color. Then we need active background and then relief, again flat, pad x equals to 10, pad y equals to 5. And the most important thing is that you need to do something when you click on this button. So there is going to be a command and this is going to be a function which we will create later. Alright, now let's understand this. So we have created a button widget here with the text search. The button text will have 12 size Helvetica. The background color is going to be light blue and text color is again white, Active background, this changes the button background to a slightly different shade of blue when it is clicked. So it looks like so it makes a good feel out of it, right? That's why. Relief flat, again for the same reason, which gives the button a flat modern look. Padding for defining the spacing, and this command basically associates the button with the function, and this function is not defined here, but we will define it later. Now the last thing and the important thing, to pack this. So this I'm going to pack to the left, as in beside your entry box. Now we will have a weather display section. So for this, again we will need a frame, tk.frame, root, background color is going to be same, now we need to pack this frame, and rest to padding equals to 20. Then we need to create the weather label, tk.label. So this is going to be created under weather frame. Text is going to be something like weather colon and then hyphen. Then you need font, foreground color and background color. So here the background color is same, your dark gray. Now let's pack this. Now I need one more thing, which is your weather icon label. And this is going to be under weather frame, and background color is going to be, so this creates another label to display a weather icon. So this icon is basically just for whether it's night or day, so sun or moon, something like that, right? Now let's pack this, and let's provide a vertical padding as 10. Alright, now for air pollution data, so here again we will have pollution frame, tk.frame, and here root, and then your background color. Now let's pack this. Alrighty, now we need the label, so air quality label, pollution frame, a text. So it's going to be like this. We have text like this, then we have Helvetica 16 font size, foreground color white, background again same dark gray. And now let's pack this one with vertical padding. Alright, now we need pollutants label. So this label is to display the levels of various air pollutants, like your PM 2.5, PM 10. So initially they are set to empty like this, and when we have the data, then we will just replace these with the actual value. Now the font is Helvetica with white text, dark gray background, and the text is left aligned. That is why you have justify equals to left. Now let's pack this. Now to run this, we just need to do root dot main loop, and we cannot run this right now because we don't have this method. Alrighty, so now let's work on this method. So the first thing that we need is city entry dot get. So this is where we actually get the user data from, and if the data is not empty, in that case we want to get the coordinates. If we have the coordinates, then we will fetch latitude and longitude, and now we will fetch the weather data. Okay, so it's weather date. Alright, now it's going to be latitude and longitude. Now if we have the weather data, in that case we are going to have another method, update weather display. And here we will provide the weather data. Alright, now for pollution data, we will fetch using get air pollution, latitude and longitude. And if we have the pollution data with us, in that case we will call the method update air pollution display, and here we will just do pollution data. Now if we don't have the coordinates, in that case we will go inside else and we will print using a access box to display a pop-up, and the title is again going to be error, and then we will say city not found. Now let's say if we don't get the city, in that case we will say message box dot show error, please enter a city name. Alright, so now let's summarize what we have done here. This basically retrieves the city name that the user has entered in the city entry input field. This checks if the user entered a city name or not. If she did, in that case we want to fetch the city coordinates, so this calls the method to fetch the latitude and longitude of the city. If we have received the coordinates, in that case so this means that if a valid coordinate has been returned, in that case proceed to fetch weather and pollution data. So this basically calls your weather data method to fetch the weather data based on the coordinates. Similarly, we have this air pollution method. So if weather data is successfully retrieved, it calls the update weather display to update the weather display. Similarly, we have this air pollution display to update the pollution display. Alright, now for update weather display method, we need weather data. So here what we need to do is, first thing first is that we need to fetch the temperature, that's a must, and that is going to be inside main and then temp. And let's do a flashback. So if I go to this weather API, hit send. So here if you see, we have this main, inside that we have temp, and this is your temperature. Now here we have not used metrics as units, so that is why you get the temperature like this. Alright, now we have the temp, then we need the description similarly, so and that we will fetch using weather data, and then your weather, inside that 0th in text, and then your description. And this we can easily confirm here. So inside weather we have an array, through that the 0th index, and inside that we have description. Now I can code. again we have this icon, this, which we need to parse basically using our library bytes. Alright, now we need to configure this. So weather label dot config, and here the text would be your temperature, and then we will say degree Celsius, so something like this, and then we have the description dot title. Now for icon, basically I need to provide the URL, and there is another URI for this. So here we need to provide the icon code, and then it will generate us the PNG. Then we need to get the response of this URL. So get, and then icon URL. Now let's fetch the image from this response. So image dot open, here we will say bytes IO, and then your icon response dot content. Alright, so we have the image with us. Let's do a few modifications. Let's resize this. Alright, now for icon photo, don't worry, I'll explain everything. Image tk dot photo image, we will provide the icon image here. Then we need to display it in our weather icon label. So let's configure this. Image equals icon photo, and lastly we need dot image equals icon photo. Alright, so here we have actually extracted the temperature from the weather data dictionary. Then we have extracted the weather description like clear sky from the weather data. Here we have to fetch the weather icon code, which is used to fetch the corresponding weather icon image. So the code we have here, and then we have constructed the URL to fetch the weather icon image. We sent a request to download the weather icon. Then we open the image from the response using bytes IO and image.open. Here we have basically resized the icon to 100 by 100 pixels for display. Then we have to convert the image into a format that TKinter basically can display. This updates the weather icon label with the new image, and this keeps the reference to the image to prevent it from being garbage collected by Python. So similarly, what we have done for update weather display, we will work on another method, which is your update air pollution display. So this will get an argument which is your pollution data. Now first thing that we need to do is we need to create a GUI, and for this we will have pollution data main and then a GUI. Then we need to fetch the pollutants, and again we will use pollution data and then components. Now let's take a look at our Postman. So we have this API here, and here if you see we have main, and then inside that we have a GUI. And why we are not using list here, the reason with that is that in your method get air pollution you are fetching the data through list only. So here that's why we don't need to refer to this or this. We already have the data from this. That's why we are fetching main and then AQI. Now for components, we have fetched components entirely. Alright, now let's move ahead. So we need another method here, which is to classify the air quality. So air quality class equals to classify air quality AQI. So let's create this method. So here we will have few if-else conditions. So if AQI less than equals to 50, in that case we will return good. Else if we have AQI less than equals to 100, it's moderate, and similarly we have conditions like this. So this we don't have to explain much, so this we are using here. Now this call basically calls your method which we have just created to determine the air quality classification, and the result we are storing in this. Now we need to configure the air quality label as well. So for that we need something like this. So here what we are doing is, so now here we are just configuring the label with the text air quality index AQI, and then here we are printing the AQI and then the air quality class. Now similarly for pollutants as well, you need to configure this, and that we have here something like this. I know it looks like a big mess, but yeah, if you want to display something specific, then you can do that. I have displayed everything, I haven't left anything here, so I am displaying everything here. And now we are done with our update pollution display, and it looks like we are about done with our code. So what we can do is we can try to run this. Alright, so now let's run this application. So it looks good, we didn't get any error. Now let's see if the API is working fine. So I'll do Noida search, and we got the temperature, we got clear sky, and we got night here. Along with that we got air quality index, which is good. And let's do Manali search, and we got 13 clear sky, AQI 2, which is again good. I think there is a problem with AQI. So it looks like we have 5 here, which seems good, but if I do here, and if you see here 5 means that it is very poor. So I think we have to change the logic a bit. So when we are fetching the AQI, we basically get values like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 only, right? So this is what we get here. So what we have to do is, so let's change this a bit. If this equals 1, equals 2. Now let's run this again, and here let's say Manali, and here we have AQI 2, which is moderate, and that's good, right? And I know a clearer city where you will see AQI is 1. Okay, here also we have AQI 2. Okay, let's Google the best city having air quality. Okay, let's randomly try Hobart. I don't know, if I'm just trying to find out one with AQIS1. So yeah, okay, luckily I got it. So here if you see, we got scattered clouds and we have an icon as cloud, and here we see good. So yeah, so the app is working fine, the API is returning a good data, so we have a lot of things. Now coming back to OpenWeatherMap API, you have a lot of API here. So I have used only two, which is your current weather data and air pollution API. You have a lot more that you can try to enhance this project as much as you can. Alright, so this is it for today. I really hope that you might have learned something new with this video. If you have, don't forget to like the video and press the subscribe button. I really hope that we will meet in some other video. Till then, have a good day, stay safe, and bye bye.